Fighting back tears, the caretaker of shrines in Kusu Island tells ST he hopes to have them rebuilt. Households are throwing out more rubbish every day, but recycling rates are stuck at a 10-year low. And a former JC student tells us how she got back on track after it went badly wrong in her first year. Good evening, you're watching The Big Story with me, Haran. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you will not miss a single episode. We begin with the latest on the investigations into the fire at Kusu Island. A cleaner tells the Straits Times that he was the first to spot last night's fire, which started at 6:20 p.m. and destroyed 3 Malay shrines at the top of a hill on the island. The raging fire was put out with 2 water jets within an hour of SCDF's arrival. SCDF says there have been no reported injuries so far. Now here's a look at what's left of the shrines, also known as Keramat. Most pilgrims visit the shrines around September and October during the 9th lunar month. The shrines are looked after by caretakers, a role that has been passed down the generations within families. According to current caretaker Ishak Samsudin, the shrines will have to be rebuilt.
So very sad and feel my heart very all painful. Okay. But for me, I have to think positive rather than negative. It happened, it's happened. There's something is in the future, the good will come. You don't think about anything, don't blame any people because it happened, consider as a disaster. So I hope we can recover the place, renovate the place as soon as possible. That's my main concern for the next generation to pass down. My plan is right now we have to pay for the insurance, but the quantity of the amount should be not enough. Because my insurance cover for 150k. Definitely it's not enough to rebuild the place. So maybe only the God can tell.
Producing more waste but not keeping up with recycling. Latest figures from the National Environment Agency show households in Singapore generated 1.82 million tonnes of waste in 2021, up from 1.77 million tonnes in 2020. The domestic recycling rate remained at 13% in 2021, unchanged from 2020, which was the first year of the pandemic. Journalist Shabana Begum joins me now to share more. Shabana, why has the domestic recycling rate remained stagnant at 13%, and what can be done to improve it?
Households produced more waste last year compared with 2020, and that led to 14% more recyclables collected. It was a corresponding increase alongside the increased amount of waste produced and generated. But still, the percentage being recycled remained the same for both years at 13%. So one major way to improve this would be through behavior change. And among various measures and campaigns, the National Environment Agency is planning to distribute recycling bins to households in the later part of this year, to homes that want them. Hopefully, it makes the recycling processes easier for households where they can keep the recyclables in the bin and drop them off at the blue recycling bins in their neighborhood once their smaller home recycling bins are fuller. And I'm guessing that this aspect of building the household habit will need to be built and developed over time, even when the household recycling bins are distributed to homes later.
And Singapore wants to raise the domestic recycling rate to 30% by 2030. That's in about 8 years. Do you think it's possible, and what could the challenges be in achieving this goal?
So recently, since last year, there have been more opportunities for residents to recycle items such as their e-waste, electronic waste, and bottles and cans. So last July, NEA started a new e-waste collection system with more collection bins placed in various parts of the island. There are currently more than 640 e-waste collection bins at locations such as electronic stores, supermarkets, and community centers. And to date, more than 4,000 tons of e-waste have been collected through that program that started in July last year. And this is 3 times the amount collected annually under NEA's previous National Voluntary Partnership Program, where industry partners led recycling programs for household e-waste. And as for bottles and cans, a return scheme for beverage containers will soon be implemented. Under that scheme, or such a scheme, a deposit is included in the price of packaged drinks bought from supermarkets, for instance. And consumers will get back that deposit when they return. The deposit would refer to a small amount of money, maybe, when they return the bottles to reverse vending machines, for example. In terms of challenges, beyond getting more people to adopt this habit, recycling correctly is another obstacle. Recycling correctly, recycling right. About 40% of the contents found in the blue recycling bins cannot be recycled due to leakage and contamination, mainly from food and liquid waste, possibly because the items are not washed and cleaned before being dropped off at the recycling bin. And there is also the misconception that items such as plush toys, clothing, and styrofoam can be recycled.
So, Shabana, on that note, for those looking to recycle but don't know where to start or how to do it properly, like you mentioned, right? Where can they find relevant information?
So NEA's Recycle Right campaign and website would be a good starting point. The website also has information on what items can or cannot be recycled. For the reverse vending machines for bottles and cans mentioned earlier, you can check out the Recycle and Save website, which is the name of the program. NEA also has a website on where to recycle e-waste, pointing out the 640 locations and other collection schemes under the e-waste recycling program.
Journalist Shabana Begum. In other news, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern will be in Singapore until Wednesday, her first overseas visit since the pandemic and her second trip here. An official welcome ceremony will be held at the Istana tomorrow, where Ms Ardern will call on President Halimah Yacob and have a meeting with Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. Singapore's Foreign Affairs Ministry says Prime Minister Ardern's visit reaffirms the excellent relations between Singapore and New Zealand, underpinned by the Singapore-New Zealand Enhanced Partnership established during Prime Minister Ardern's official visit to Singapore in 2019. The Land Transport Authority says that the processing time for vehicle entry permit applications to enter Singapore will be progressively reduced from the current 7 weeks to 3. This as it has increased its resources to cope with the surge in applications. Those looking to apply for the VEP can only do it online via the LTA's One Motoring website. Overseas, Shanghai reporting its first COVID-19 fatalities during this current outbreak, with 3 reported deaths yesterday, who were aged between 89 and 91 and had underlying diseases. With the crisis in the financial hub only escalating at the end of March, the damage from outbreaks and lockdowns is likely not captured in China's latest GDP figures. In data released today, the economy rose 4.8% in the first quarter from a year earlier. But quarter on quarter, it expanded at a slower pace of 1.3%, suggesting weakening growth momentum. Ukrainian troops in Mariupol are not giving up the city despite a Russian demand to surrender. After almost 2 months of intense fighting, Mariupol lies in ruins with thousands of civilians believed to have died, but remains a strategic prize for the invaders because it connects Russia-controlled Crimea to the territories of pro-Moscow separatists in the Donbas region. Now, how do you remember your time in junior college? Was it a fantastic 2 years where you experienced a lot of firsts? Or was it a bit of a shock when you encountered unexpected challenges? Our next guest was a student who had to redo her first year in junior college. Hajani Jagatisan, then at St. Andrews JC, was the only one in her class who was retained. But she went on to ace her A-levels, getting straight A's for her 3 H2 subjects and is now hoping to get a place in university. Hajani joins us now. Welcome to the show, Hajani. How do you feel when you failed to make it to year 2? And how do you overcome this setback to turn the situation around?
For me, I think it was an obvious feeling of disappointment. I was honestly very devastated when I found out because I wasn't a student that didn't study at all and I did not expect it at all. So when my teacher pulled me aside and told me that I was going to retain, it was very shocking. And I cannot say that there was a concrete turning point that made me stop being sad. It was more of like it took a few months for me to accept it, and I have to say that it was definitely because of my school's Head Start program and the people I met that year that made it much less difficult than it ended up being.
Tell me about this support system that you have, your parents, your teachers, your family, your friends, in helping you to overcome, your experience repeating school for another year.
So this is something that I can genuinely talk about for hours because I can safely say that I know that I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for the people that was around me. So my friends they've never made me feel less because I retained. My father was insanely supportive. He always told me that you are here because you're meant to be here. This is the point of your life where you're supposed to be, and everything happens for a reason. And he never pressurized me. It wasn't like, oh, you repeated already, I expect you to score well. It was just do your best, and I'll be proud. And that's exactly what I did. I did my best. I didn't face the pressure, and I think I did better than I expected. And I had the best group of friends that I could have asked for that made me feel like it was never a competition. We just learned from each other, and I had very supportive class. My teachers were incredibly patient with me. I had a specific history teacher, Mr. Chi, that always put my emotional well-being first before my grades. Every time he returned a grade, he would say the same thing. Your grades matter to me because they matter to you. And that changed my mindset on everything because I knew that he was genuinely looking out for me. And that made me want to study even harder, to make him proud. And that's exactly what I did. Studied really hard for history and every other subject. I just felt hurt. And I think that was the whole, my friends, family, and teachers all helped me so much in building that confidence that I lost when I initially found out I was retaining.
Hajani, on that note, now that you've got your results, what are the next steps?
So I've always wanted to go to law school, and it was so out of reach for me, but I just applied for law school in Singapore, and hopefully I'll be studying law, politics, or economics in NUS or NTU or SMU.
Hajani Jagatisan, thank you so much for coming onto the show. We wish you all the best in your future endeavours. Like Hajani, Gwen Lim also repeated her first year of JC and she bounced back. There are about 700 students who have to repeat a year of JC every year. Now you can read more at str.sg/smart parenting. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Hari Haran. See you tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.